Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Killer Author Club. We've got a super fun evening planned for you with Joshua Moehling in the hot seat. We'll be talking all about A Long Time Gone in just a minute, so grab your cocktail, your list of questions for Killer Joshua, and we will see you on the flip side.
Welcome to the Killer Author Club. 3 best-selling authors talking about killing, of the fictional kind, with the best thriller and suspense authors in the business. Killer conversations, killer cocktails, and killer guests, with your hosts, Kimberly Bell, Heather Gudenkauf, and Kara Ruda. This is the Killer Author Club.
Hello to all our new members and to the Killer Author Club OGs online or listening to the podcast. We are so glad to welcome you to the club. I'm Killer Kimberly Bell.
And I'm Killer.
Sorry.
It's my turn. I was so excited to jump
They're
in.
eager killers.
Yeah, eager killer.
I'm Killer Heather Gudenkauf.
Oh, and I'm Killer Kara Ruda. Now, talking at the right time.
And tonight we have Killer Joshua Moehling here with us to answer all our burning questions about A Long Time Gone. We have tons to talk about along with all the usual killer fun. Speaking of fun, how about some in your inbox? The Killers have a newsletter chock full of killer bookish news, which is going out first thing tomorrow morning, including details of the Killers on tour. That's right. We are going to be coming live and in person to the Sunshine State this March. Details in tomorrow's newsletter. Sign up at killerauthorclub.com. Also, if you can't get enough of our live shows, make sure to check out the Killer Postmortem, otherwise known as the After Show, which is exclusive to our Killer podcast. Tonight's show will be available on your favorite podcasting app starting this Friday. Links to download are on, guess where? killerauthorclub.com. But Heather, let's get into our killer guest for tonight.
Yes, I'm so honored to introduce Joshua Moehling. He is the critically acclaimed author of Ben Packard series and a 2-time Lammy Award nominee for Best LGBTQ Mystery Thriller. He lives in Minneapolis with his husband. Congrats, Joshua, and welcome to the Killer Author Club hot seat.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here. I've watched so many of these, and you guys get the biggest names, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have been invited. Thank you.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here as well. And we have so many questions about A Long Time Gone, but can you start with a brief elevator pitch about the book?
Yeah, so just a quick background. Ben Packard is a sheriff's deputy who lives and works in a small rural town in northern Minnesota. And he moved to this small town a few years ago to kind of escape the trauma of the death of someone that was close to him. And he's got a connection to this small town. He used to spend his summers here at his grandparents' house when he was a kid. And this small town is also where his brother disappeared from 30 years ago. Walked out of his grandparents' house in the middle of the night one winter and was never seen again. So Packard is now a sheriff's deputy in this small town. And, I've kind of been teasing this. A Long Time Gone is the 3rd book in the series. And I've kind of been teasing out hints or developments about the brother's case. And so in this 3rd book now, it opens with Packard is working security at the courthouse, and somebody brings a gun and opens fire at the courthouse. Packard is forced to shoot this person and kill them. And he's on administrative leave. And now he's got time to look into his brother's case. There were some developments at the end of the 2nd book about his brother, and now he's looking into what happened to his brother. And along the way, he goes to visit his grandparents' house for the first time in a really long time. And he finds out that the woman who owned the house currently and lived there has died in what they're calling an accident. But Packard sees something that makes him not exactly believe that story. And so he's looking into his brother's disappearance. He's looking into the death of this woman. And there's somebody out there who's willing to kill to keep him from finding out the answers that he seeks.
Yeah, so good. We loved it. So readers, we need you to get chatty and start dropping your questions in the comments so we can ask Joshua about them. But first, it's time to talk about our episode's special drink.
That's right. The killers love our cocktails and mocktails, and every episode we ask our killer guests to bring their favorite drink along with a recipe. And tonight's drink is the Better with Bourbon Spicy Cider Mocktail. Joshua, can you tell us about your drink you picked?
Looks so
So
good.
I did my research. I looked through the list of the previous cocktails and I was like, okay, they've got enough old fashions, which is what we drink in our house. But we're also doing dry January right now, which January has got to be the worst month to do this.
It's the longest month
So long,
ever.
it's so dark, it's so cold here in Minnesota. And it's really trying our relationship to see if we enjoy each other's company after this extended sobriety. I might be in trouble because my husband keeps counting down the days. He's like, 4 more days.
How are you going to celebrate? Are you going to go out or just, have your old fashions or?
I have a book launch party on the 5th, so I'm not missing the booze that much. So I'm in no hurry to get back on it. But I bet I'll have a beer at my launch party next week.
Yeah, I think you should. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers to Better with
Cheers.
Bourbon.
That's a fabulous book.
Mm. All right. So the Killers started the Killer Author Club 2 years ago so that readers like you can interact with some of the best suspense and thriller authors in the business. Our winter and spring lineup includes superstars like Greg Hurwitz next week, Lisa Unger, Amy Tintera, Peter Swanson, and so many more. For dates, times, past episodes, etc., surf to killerauthorclub.com. But tonight we're here to talk about A Long Time Gone. Hank Philippi Ryan, who we all love, Killer Hank. Only Moehling can craft such an entertaining page turner of a mystery, an outsider's tale with life-changing themes and surprising solutions. And our very own Killer Heather said, intrigue, suspense, memorable characters, shining prose, and an ending that is equal parts heart-stopping and heart-tugging. A Long Time Gone firmly secures Moehling's place as tour de force in the thriller genre. So, Joshua, obviously you are a killer of great renown, and now we need to know your answer to the killer question, which is, when do you kill?
So I probably would answer this a couple of different ways. I mean, literally, when do I kill? I'm a morning person, so I like a little bit of murder with my oatmeal in the morning. Get up and try to get some of my words for the day early in the morning. Go to the gym. I'm almost done with the 4th book, and so I'm like pages away from the end of the 4th book. So my routine lately is 500 words in the morning, gym, lunch, 500 words in the afternoon. And if I don't hit my word count during then maybe I'll keep working a little bit in the evening. But it's downhill from here where I'm at.
You're getting
Yeah. I love that. I love that feeling too when you're so close to the end.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, I feel like we need to start with talking about Ben Packard because he is such a great character. He's complex, diligent. He has a lot of integrity. Where did he come from? What made you create him in your head and on paper, and what convinced you that he deserved more than one book?
So Ben Packard was kind of an accident. My first book was In There He Kept Her, and I wrote a book before that had the same small town Minnesota setting, and it didn't have a sheriff's deputy as the main character. I won't bore you with what happened in that book, but I sent that book out to a bunch of agents, and a few of them read it, and they all came back and said it doesn't work. And I had put so much time and so many revisions into that book at that point. I just didn't know how to fix it. But in that book, there were 2 of these characters, and at one point they're having a conversation, and they've both been interviewed by the sheriff's deputy, and they're asking each other, "You think that guy's gay?" And then they're making some cracks about him being gay, and then he's kind of the butt of this joke, and then that's it. So Ben Packard was not. He didn't even have a name in that book. He was, the topic of conversation between these 2 characters, and that was it. So I I couldn't figure out how to fix that book, and I was trying to decide what I was going to do next. And for some reason, I just was stuck on this idea of what it would be like to be a gay man working in law enforcement in a rural community, and where did he come from and how did he get there? And then I had to give him a case to solve. So 2 teenagers break into an old man's house looking for prescription drugs and encounter a monster, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
He's such a great character. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite police procedural characters I've read. And so I'm so glad to know there's going to be a 4th book.
I know.
And a lot of people are asking, including me, so Heather and Joshua, you have an interesting story of how you met or something. We've got to get that out there.
Well, it's even wilder than that. Joshua, do you want to tell it, or?
I can tell it. So one of the very first events I did when my first book came out was they said, we're sending you to Iowa and you're going to do an event with Heather Gudenkauf. And I was like, all right, that sounds great. I grabbed 2 of Heather's books and read them before I went. And then I went to her website. I was like, what else can I learn about Heather before I go to Iowa? And on her bio page, the very first sentence, I don't know if it still says this, but it said, Heather Gudenkauf was born in Wagner, South Dakota. And my dad still lives in Wagner, South Dakota. And I spent every summer as a kid in Wagner, South Dakota with my brother and my dad at our grandparents' house. And Wagner, South Dakota is about 1,000 people in southeastern South Dakota. And nobody's ever heard of it. Nobody's ever been there.
Yeah.
And it's not to denigrate Wagner. It's a great place, but if you haven't been anywhere near there, you've never heard of this place. And I literally thought my computer was broken when I saw that.
I didn't know anybody else from Wagner. I mean, tiny town. When I was born, which was before Josh was born, I'm sure.
I don't know. We're pretty close, I think.
My mom had a medical emergency and when I was born, and had to have a blood transfusion from the maintenance worker from the hospital. I mean, it's that small. It's just a tiny little place, but that was a really cool connection that we have. And then it's like, okay, yeah. And so we've met a couple times and done a few book events together, but that will always be like our big connection.
It's so crazy too, because I was telling somebody, I was like, if I tried to pitch a book idea to my editor about 2 thriller writers from the same small town in South Dakota, and one of them dies and the other one's the suspect, they would say, do they have to be from the same small town in South Dakota? Nobody's going to believe that.
And here you go.
It's true.
It is true. So much fun. Yeah.
All right. Well,
we'll need to do a book event in Wagner.
Got to go to Wagner, yeah.
So I know that a lot of people have also wondered, can this book be read as a standalone? Or because it is a series, I mean, do people need to go back to book 1? What do you think? What would you recommend to folks?
I mean, I tried hard to make this book stand on its own for people who haven't read the previous books. So I was talking to the reporter at the local newspaper here in Minneapolis, and he had not read the first 2 books, and he told me it worked great as a standalone. So he said he didn't feel like he had missed out much. I mean, you get to see kind of Packard's development over the first 2 books. He kind of comes out of his shell a little bit across these books, and there's, I'm teasing you about what happens with the brother across the first 2 books. The people who read Where the Dead Sleep had to wait 1.5 years. It ended on a cliffhanger. Most people have been waiting 1.5 years for this book, and I'm really sorry about that. But, yeah, I think you can start with this one. If you haven't read the other 2, I think you can start with this one.
And then go back and read the other 2.
For sure. Yeah. For sure.
So essentially you're telling 3 stories here, right? You're telling the story of the shooting that happened at the courthouse, which you mentioned, the death of an elderly woman that they find in her house in the basement, and then the story of Ben's brother, what happened to Ben's brother. How did you write that logistically? Was that hard to because you did it so seamlessly. They all just meshed together so perfectly.
Oh, yeah, thanks. It was it took a lot of editing, let's put it that way. And I had a lot of great feedback from my editors along the way who were like, you need to help. Because, you know, it starts with Nick's story. It starts with the shooting, and then he's on to Nick's thing, and then he's on to the woman's thing, the elderly woman who died. And my editor was like, you got to help keep both of these things fresh in people's mind. And you've got to, Packard is really struggling with the fact that he's shot somebody in the line of duty. And there's a whole thing about, you know, the kind of the current state of law enforcement. And you can't write about law enforcement in Minnesota and not talk about George Floyd. So that's kind of in front of his mind. And, you know, this idea that he's contributed to this narrative that cops just show up with guns and kill people. And that's not the kind of cop that he wants to be. So, you know, my editors were really good about, you got to kind of keep him working through all of this stuff through the whole book. And then the woman's death, she died in the house that Packard's grandparents used to live in. So it's the connection to Nick is there. That's where he disappeared from, and that's where she died. And so it's all kind of muddled up in Packard's brain, and in a way kind of helped me keep all those balls juggling.
Did you write it chronologically like the way we read it, or did you write the different stories and then wove them together?
No, the way I write is from the first word to the last word.
Yeah, okay.
And muddle my way through it. The courthouse shooting, actually, the first draft, I was like on chapter 10 when I started writing that scene. And I was like, wait a minute. This needs to be chapter 1. So I use Scrivener. So I just dragged that folder to the
Great for that. Yeah.
Best thing about Scrivener. You can move it all around and find your stuff so quickly. Yeah.
That's great. We also loved Ben's relationship with his mom, Pam, who had us laughing. Can you tell us about her and where her character, I read where her character came from, but I thought it was great. Where did she come from?
Yeah, so I think in one of the first or second book, I said Packard's mom lives in Arizona, and I didn't know what I was going to do with that. It's just like, sometimes you have to make these decisions and come back and figure them out later. And just kind of coincidentally, Chris, my husband, and I were in Sedona about 2 years ago, and we went hiking. We spent 4 or 5 days there hiking, and we went on this hike, and we got to this kind of plateau way up in the mountains there. And there were 3 women there, and they were kind of dressed in these kind of capes like things and big scarves. It was March. It was still cold. And they had like beads in their hair, and they had this blanket laid out, and there was a photo of a woman, maybe a friend of theirs who passed away, I don't know. And they had crystals, and they had sage, and they were playing the tambourine. And I was just standing there watching these ladies, and I was like, that's Ben Packard's mom right there. And I was like, it just so far from Packard in temperament and mannerisms. And I just really wanted somebody who could make him cringe and get his goat a little bit, and somebody who, you know, had dealt with the trauma of, you know, he lost his brother, she lost her son, and you know, they've chosen totally different ways to deal with that. And it was a lot of fun. They play it for a lot of humor in the book, but they also kind of have a serious conversation about what it was like for her and what she needed to do to get through that.
Right. She was very funny, and like you said, it was a lighter spot in the story, right? Because you're talking about a lot of heavy things, and then she came in and she was just so out there, but hilariously so. But she was also so wise, and so supportive of him, and making jokes about, you know, like trying to get him to, you know, have like find love with someone, or you know, it was great. She was very funny. And Susan Berg in the Killer Author Club group on Facebook reached out to say, more Pam, please, and maybe a novella starring her while we wait for the next book.
I actually have an idea for a story that I'm going to try to write this year that's got Packard and Gary Bushwright, the rescue dog owner from the first book, and Pam and Packard's mom from the third book, and they all come to Christmas dinner.
I love
That would
it.
be perfect.
See how that goes.
So yeah, let's talk about Sandy Lake. It's a small town filled with so many unique, fun characters, but they're often at times at odds with one another. So is Sandy Lake fictional?
It's
Is that
100% fictional. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know if there's a Sandy Lake, actual Sandy Lake on the map in Minnesota or not. There might be. But yeah, you can't find this Sandy Lake on any map in Minnesota. When people ask me where it is, I say it's kind of north central, northwestern part of Minnesota.
Yeah. And so like you live in more of an urban area, but you don't, in your books, you don't ignore what's happening in the big city. You include that. And so, the things that are definitely on Ben's mind. So, so how much does Packard's past experience in Sandy Lake impact his ability to work on the cases of missing teens, do you think, in the present day?
Oh, that's a really good question. Because he was a Minneapolis police officer before he moved to take the sheriff's deputy job in this small town. So I imagine he's seen everything, and maybe there'll be prequels about Ben Packard solving cases in Minneapolis if I ever get around to that. But yeah, I think he's probably got experience doing all of that. And, I imagine that law enforcement in a small town is much, much different than it is in a big city. Different issues, or maybe some of the same issues on a different scale. I don't know. There's certain parts of this that I have to imagine because I don't work in law enforcement. I did take a class at the Sheriff's Academy in Scott County, which is kind of a smaller county outside of the Twin Cities here, and learned all about, like, for 7 or 8 Mondays in a row, we went down to the sheriff's department and got to learn everything about what it's like to be a sheriff's deputy, all the different kinds of works that they do, the jail, the sheriff, the patrol, the water rescue, all that kind of stuff. It was fascinating.
That's so fun. How do you sign up for that? Who's the class for?
It's for the community.
Normally.
It's free
Okay.
to anybody in the community. Yeah. I think a lot of counties have this. I know even Minneapolis has it, but Minneapolis was kind of too big. I wanted a smaller setting to see what that looked like. Yeah.
So cool. So I read some interviews where you talked about your journey to becoming a writer. Would you share that with our watchers, listeners?
Gosh, what can I tell you? I mean, I was a bookish kid growing up, just very much an indoor child. I did not like going outside, playing sports. We moved a lot as kids because my mom was in the Army, and so wherever we landed, the first place we went to was the library. And so I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. That's all I ever really imagined being. Stephen King was the first person I recognized as an author. I was like, oh, the first person whose books I read because of his name on them when I was probably 11 years old, way too young. But then after that, I was like, I want to be Stephen King when I grow up. And I was an English major in college, and I went to, I got half of an MFA and then dropped out. That really wasn't my scene. And then didn't write for a really long time, like nothing, like my late 20s, my mid 30s, just like nothing was going on. And then I finally kind of kicked myself in the butt a little bit and said, hey, this was your dream. You said this is what you wanted to do. So you actually have to write something if you want to be a writer. And so for probably like 15 years, I wrote bad books with really nothing to show for it. And I say that, but I also would say that I don't think there's any such thing as wasted writing. I think I got better.
Agreed.
Book.
Yeah.
But 15 years is a long time to go without, when you're the only person, or there's a only very small group of people who are seeing what you're writing and giving you feedback on it, until I eventually wrote "And Larry Kept Her," and that got me an agent and then a book deal.
Yeah. And I think you have to do those practice books, to find your voice and to figure out what kind of stories you want to tell, all those
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wasted at all.
No. And now we all have a new favorite series.
That's right.
So the wait was definitely worth it for us, but we love it.
Took a lot of
more.
practice.
We want more. And Joshua is being so generous, and his publisher is, they're giving away 5 copies of a long time gone to lucky US winners. So it doesn't matter if you're watching on Facebook or on Instagram or YouTube. We scour the comments, just drop a message into the comments, but please make sure you let us know where you're from. But you have to answer this question. Your chance to win, correctly answer, with the publication of A Long Time Gone, how many books are now in the Ben Packard series? Answer that question and you can win one of 5 of these beautiful books.
Exactly. Okay. And the Killers are big fans of independent booksellers, and we want to support them any way we can, which is why we ask every author to tell us their favorite. Joshua's chosen Once Upon a Crime mystery books in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Joshua, can you please tell us why you love this bookstore so much?
Oh my God. Heather, have you been to Once Upon a Crime?
I have visited. It's great. It's a great spot.
It is the coolest bookstore.
Experience. Yeah. Books. I mean, books, of course, everywhere. Yeah. Amazing.
It's small, but all they stock are mysteries and thrillers.
Mm.
And the people that work there are amazing. They're super supportive of local authors, big name authors. When they come through town, stop at Once Upon a Crime. They've got a great used section. You go down this hallway into this annex and you can see a bunch of old collectible books and used books. And they're just one of my favorite bookstores. They're great.
Awesome. Okay. We'll drop a link to A Long Time Gone in the comments so you can order it along with any others you'd like to on your wish list from his favorite bookstore, Once Upon a Crime.
That's right. And obviously, the Killers love to read, and the Killer Author Club is the place to share the love for fabulous books. Post pictures, write reviews, ask for recommendations, give yours. We love it when you guys get chatty in the group about books. And now we want to ask Killer Joshua, what are you currently reading and loving?
So I have it right here. I'm still kind of shocked that I'm doing an event with TJ Klune in about 10 days.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
And this is his new book that's just about to come out. And so I'm reading this for our event. And I'm also reading Cerulean Sea because I think I'm the last person on earth who hasn't read this.
No, you're not.
Okay, me and Kimberly.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic. I'm so honored that he asked me to do this event with him. And the new book is great, and I'm enjoying the Cerulean Sea as well.
What?
Oh, wonderful. So tonight we have not 1, not 2, but 3 new releases that we want you to add to your toppling TBR. So the first one, check out We Are Watching by Allison Galen. So a slick, riveting, and all too plausible tale of psychological suspense where a mother is desperate to protect her family as they become targets of a group of violent conspiracy theorists. So that one's coming out, as well as out today, The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Finder, a breakneck thriller about a young hedge funder who falls for an attractive woman he meets at a party who turns out to be the daughter of a Russian oligarch.
Uh-oh.
That seems so timely.
Not a good choice.
Finally, we have from Rhea Frey, in this haunting story that spans 3 decades, a young gymnast escapes a kidnapping. Years later, she's forced to face the past when her own daughter disappears.
Yikes.
All the when she's gone. Ooh, that sounds chilling. So we have 10 copies of We Are Watching. Yes, you heard that right. 10 copies. And 1 copy of The Oligarch's Daughter and 1 copy of When She's Gone to give away to lucky US viewers. You know the drill, so drop a comment if you'd like to be entered into any or all of these chances to win these books. So remember to tell us where you're from, and good luck. And don't forget to check out the Killer's latest books.
That's right. Find out what the nanny saw in the sequel to Kara's The Second Mrs. Strom.
That's right. Heather's latest, Everyone Is Watching, is a Big Brother meets Clue in a reality show gone horribly wrong.
And Paris is always a good idea, and so is Kimberly's The Paris Widow, about a dream vacation gone bad.
All right, and membership has its privileges. So if you're on Facebook, check out our private members-only group called the Killer Author Club, where all the killer magic is found, all the giveaways, all that kind of stuff. Every episode, the killers choose a name from the hat to win a piece of swag, all of which can be found at killerauthorclub.com. Tonight's winner is Lori Alcon Brown. So Lori, congratulations. Please send one of us killers your address and we'll send you some Killer Author Club swag.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, if you'd like to throw your hat in the ring to win some swag, all you have to do is become a member of the Facebook page. And we'd also like to thank Book Reporter for sharing our upcoming episodes in their newsletter. If you want to be up to date on bookish news, sign up for their newsletter too.
Yes, absolutely. They're great. So, Joshua, we have excellent news. You survived the Killer Author Club.
Oh my God, I've been waiting for this. I'm gonna tattoo right here on my chest.
So please tell us where listeners and viewers can find you.
I have a website, joshuamoehling.com. I have a newsletter that goes out very, very sporadically. If you want to sign up for it there. And then I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook, J Moehling, on both of those.
Love it.
Wonderful. And that does it for tonight's episode. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and make sure to mark your calendars for 1 week from tonight. Join us on February 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for a super special VIP killer, Greg Hurwitz. He will be in the Killer Author Club hot seat to tell us all about his new thriller, Nemesis. In the meantime, please find us wasting entirely too much time on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all the socials. And for all the information you need, times, upcoming schedules, past episodes, recipes, and merch, surf to killerauthorclub.com. And thanks for being part of the club. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
That does it for tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to catch our next show live, we're every other Tuesday night on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For times, upcoming schedule, and to catch up on past episodes, visit us at killerauthorclub.com. Happy reading. Now get on out there and kill that TBR.